You need a wake-up call if you don't realize that our top kickers are scoring just as much on a per-game basis as your wide receiver ones and your running back ones. It's absolutely ridiculous what our kickers are able to do on a weekly basis, and that's why I go through top 12 kickers once a week. And I'm one of the only ones who does it in the fantasy football space, so please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support. Now, dropping down to our first tier right here. We've got Mr. Brandon Aubrey at number 1 at the New York Giants tonight. Brandon Aubrey is simply just the best kicker in fantasy football. It's not particularly close. If you just look at it from a numbers perspective here, Brandon Aubrey is that dude. He doesn't miss kicks. He's got the biggest leg in the league. 65 yards is his longest field goal, and he's averaging 16.3 fantasy points per game. Now, the good thing with Brandon Aubrey is this is sustainable success, because if you look at the Cowboys offense here, they're always consistently good enough to get you down there, but even in times where they shouldn't kick field goals, they're sending Aubrey out there to do it anyways. So Aubrey's floor is so safe, and obviously his ceiling is so ridiculously high in fantasy football that Brandon Aubrey is always the number 1 kicker. So in a divisional matchup tonight, I think Brandon Aubrey is another smash play, of course. Kaimi Fairbairn's going to have a bounce back week this week. Versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, not only is it a divisional matchup that I think they'll crush the Jags in, that's just the thing, is that I think they're going to crush them. Look, the Jaguars, they stink. I mean, they're a bad team, and they got exposed as one in week 3 on Monday night for everybody to see. Kaimi Fairbairn just so happens to be kicking for a team that didn't do well last week, but if you take out that week 3 performance, Kaimi Fairbairn's been incredible in fantasy football. That week 3 performance where he got 1 point dropped his average down to 12.7. Yeah, that's still wide receiver 2, running back 2 numbers right there that Kaimi Fairbairn's averaging on a per game basis. He only missed that 1 field goal last week against the Vikings here. Against the Jags, there's going to be so many opportunities for him to rebound and to be able to score legitimate fantasy points that, again, can win you a league. Now, at number 3, I've got Chris Boswell here at the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Boswell has been great in fantasy. He's the number 2 kicker right now in fantasy football, and he is just in a great matchup here where I think that really just with the Colts, their defense isn't very good. So if you add that on top of the fact that the Steelers really consistently are getting you down there just enough to give Boswell the opportunity to kick these field goals, and a lot of the times they're longer field goals here. He's only missed 1. That's it. Boswell is remarkably accurate throughout his entire career, and so I'm not worried about Boswell and his accuracy. Like, that was a fluke that he missed that kick. He's actually one of the Steelers' best scorers on offense here. 57-yard long, you know the guy's got the leg. So Boswell against the Colts, a good matchup from a defensive perspective. And just being on a team that, again, is going to get you down there, but they're not going to capitalize a lot in the red zone. Boswell is a great number 3 pick in fantasy this week at the kicker position. Dropping down to our next tier right here, I've got Harrison Butker of the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Los Angeles Chargers this week in Los Angeles. Now, here's the thing with Harrison Butker, right? Butker, of course, is wildly accurate. He missed an extra point this year. That was a major fluke as well. So you know that if he gets the opportunity, he's going to make it. And of course, being on the Chiefs, they're going to get opportunities. Now, this year, I thought that they'd be scoring a lot more touchdowns because of the Xavier Worthy factor, but it hasn't really turned out much different than the years past. And add on top of the fact that without Isaiah Pacheco, they just have a less balanced offense. They're just not going to capitalize as much when they get in the red zone. So Harrison Butker's just going to continue to have plenty of opportunities here. Now, the one thing is obviously it's a divisional matchup, and they're taking on the Chargers defense, which again, I think is going to increase his field goals in this game. Now, they may have their way with the Chargers with or without Justin Herbert in this game. So there's definitely a possibility that Harrison Butker's like a top 10 kicker instead of a top 5 guy. But Harrison Butker, just because of the offense that he's on, I'm taking him here at number 4. At number 5 here, Braden Narvison. Braden Narvison came out of nowhere for the Green Bay Packers, taking on the Vikings this week. Obviously, big divisional matchup. I really don't know what to expect is going to happen in this game. All I can tell you is that the Packers' offense is perfect for a field goal kicker as long as Malik Willis is there. Now, it very well may be Jordan Love again this week, and it may drop him down a couple spots for me if it's Jordan Love. But right now, Braden Arvison, the only concern I have with Malik Willis is that he hasn't been super accurate. Like, he's missed 2 field goal attempts, and his longest is 47 yards. So he really hasn't shown that much range in what he's able to do kicking the football down the field, but he's still on a great offense, and he's averaging 12 fantasy points per game because he's working with that great offense here. So give me the kicker who's on a great offense in a divisional matchup where there's probably going to be, if I had to guess, the one thing I will guess is that there probably is a lot of field goal attempts in this game because both defenses are really good. Thus, Braden Arvison here at number 5. Now, rounding out this tier, I've got Matt Prater, the old man, and he's just on a great offense. Matt Prater, the Arizona Cardinals, they are taking on the Washington Commanders this week. Matt Prater's been a stud. 10.3 fantasy points per game, and he hasn't missed a kick yet. He's actually hit a 57-yard long, too. So this dude's in his 40s, and he's still kicking bombs down the field. And again, I just love the offense here. Obviously, the Commanders' defense is garbage, so they're going to be able to get down there at will. So even if it's 5 extra point attempts and 1 field goal attempt, that's 5 points through extra points. And then a field goal, maybe 30 yards, gonna give you 8 fantasy points. So I think that Matt Prater has potential for more this week if Arizona's offense stalls out, which they have done several times this year. But the one thing is, you're gonna see Prater more than you're gonna see Arizona's punter. So that's why I want Matt Prater in this matchup. That's one thing I'm definitely sure of. And another thing I'm really sure of, Patrick Mahomes line on underdog this week. It's at 0.5 total yards. Obviously, that's a big one to hit the higher on this week on underdog. And if you haven't taken advantage of it and you're not on underdog today, you got to fix it and go down in the comments, use the link that's down there. And when you use code FFN to sign up for underdog and deposit at least $10, they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 of bonus cash. And you'll be able to take advantage of the free Patrick Mahomes line this week. Now, dropping down to our next tier right here, I've got Jake Moody of the San Francisco 49ers at number 7, taking on the New England Patriots at home. Now, Jake Moody, if you really take out that first game, Moody has been about what he was last year, right? Like, that first game, he was so ridiculous. He had like 25 fantasy points. But Jake Moody, like, this offense just makes me a little bit worried, right? Because obviously San Francisco's not fully healthy right now. They don't have all their weapons. So it's hard for me to see tons of upside for Jake Moody, but the matchup this week is obviously great. Against the New England Patriots, I don't doubt that they're going to be able to get down there and be able to give Jake Moody plenty of opportunities to kick field goals. But this week, obviously, that's what this video is all about, and I like Jake Moody at number 7. At number 8 here, I've got Blake Group of the New Orleans Saints taking on the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta this week. Now, with Blake Group, he had a down week last week. It wasn't a great week for him, but it still wasn't actually terrible in his fantasy production. He's still averaging 12 fantasy points per game. And listen, he's missed kicks. Like, this is not a perfect kicker right here. So he does definitely drop down as a result of that for me personally. He's missed 3 total kicks this year, 1 extra point and 2 field goals as well. So Blake Group, I don't love that at all, but I do like the matchup being a divisional matchup. And Atlanta's defense is not bad. Like, they're not great, but they're not the worst defense in the league. So I do think Blake Group has opportunities here. And the way New Orleans offense played last week indicates that there's some flaws here still that even Clint Kubiak can't iron out every single week. So there is going to be field goal attempts this week for the New Orleans Saints and Blake Group. At number 9, I've got Will Reichard. I don't know how to pronounce it quite yet. Will Reichard of the Minnesota Vikings at the Green Bay Packers this week. Listen, Will Reichard has been really just, like, the reality with him is that he's on such a great fantasy offense with the Minnesota Vikings that consistently gets him opportunities. Now, his upside in fantasy hasn't been as high as someone like a Braden Arvison in the matchup with him because they're more efficient getting down there. That's why he only has 5 field goal attempts compared to 10 extra point attempts. Minnesota Vikings, they're capitalizing on the red zone trips. The Packers, they're not doing it as much with Malik Willis. That's why Will Reichard has more extra points than field goals here. So again, I don't know what to expect with this Green Bay matchup. Could be a really good one. Maybe it's not a super high scoring one, but I do think that Will Reichard could have more field goal attempts this week than he has all year. Now at number 10 here, I've got Mr. Austin Seibert. This dude has come out of nowhere in week 2 for the Washington Commanders and has been great in fantasy football. Taking on the Arizona Cardinals in Arizona, Austin Seibert has been that dude for the Washington Commanders. This really is a perfect offense for a kicker. He's averaging 15.5 fantasy points per game, and the matchup here against the Cardinals is not a bad one. The Cardinals' defense has been low-key good, but not good enough to stop the Washington Commanders, because the Commanders' offense is legit. Like last week against the Bengals, obviously, was one thing. It was Jaden Daniels' coming out party. I don't expect that same level of production on a weekly basis from Jaden. He's not there yet. And so that's the reason that I think Seibert's actually got upside for more here if they end up settling for more field goals, because he's been perfect on every kick so far. So I think this offense is going to be good enough to get you down there for the rest of the season. And I do think that Seibert in this matchup, obviously, wouldn't be surprised if they convert on more touchdowns than field goal attempts this week. But I do think Austin Seibert, just based on being in this offense, I think has a lot of upside in fantasy this week. Dropping out to our last tier, Evan McPherson at number 11 and Jason Myers at number 12. Now, Evan McPherson and the Bengals go on to take on the 1-2 Carolina Panthers, and that's just a matchup that I still like. Like, I'm not going to go too far. Last week, I think the Bengals are still a good team. Obviously, their offense can get you down there. They're kicking more field goal attempts than they are extra points this year so far. So I think that Evan McPherson is still in good position to hit you some good weeks here. But again, this guy has been a little disappointing. Like, he missed an extra point last week. It was really bad. But I ultimately just do think that Evan McPherson against the Panthers is going to be down there in so many scoring opportunities. It's going to be hard to keep him outside the top 12 this week. And then Jason Myers of the Seattle Seahawks taking on the Detroit Lions in Detroit this week. Jason Myers has been also really good in fantasy. He's missed one field goal, but he hit a 53-yard long. The Seahawks defense, the Seahawks offense, I should say, is actually pretty good. They've got weapons galore, and they're actually moving the football with the new offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb. So against the Lions defense that is strong at two things. The Lions defense is strong at rushing the passer and stopping the run, not particularly strong at stopping the pass, though. So I do think there's going to be lots of opportunities for Jason Myers this week to do really well in fantasy this week. So let me know how your lineups look at this week so far. And if you want to see the top 12 defense rankings for this week, click on this video right here.